Hello, hello. Good evening, guys. Welcome to another Forever Friends Academy live chat, relationship Q&A. I hope you guys are having, as per usual, a wonderful week so far. We are headed to Friday. We're headed to the weekend. So hopefully you guys are having a good week so far. And hopefully you guys can have a little nightcap with me and have a nice conversation. So as normal, I will introduce myself and wait to see if I can get some of you beautiful folks on with me tonight. So welcome to any newcomers who might be on tonight, who might be catching the replay. First of all, thank you. Your time and your energy is the most precious, right? Resources, some of the most precious resources that we have here, and you could be anywhere. So I appreciate you staying here with me. So my name is Sharla Kornegay. I'm an author, a recording artist, and creator of Interact Coaching and Forever Friends Academy. And this is my show, Forever Friends. Welcome, where we talk about all relationship topics. And, my hope and my mission is always to hopefully help people be able to navigate their relationship spaces. So welcome if you're new. And if you want to connect with me as an artist, you can find my music on all platforms. When I'm on the stage, I go by Sharla K. So feel free to peruse my catalog. Hopefully you'll find some music there that you'll like. And yeah. Hey, how are you? Another Sparks, how are you? Everything is well. Everything is well. I cannot complain. Top of the new year. I hope everything is well with you as well. Oh, no problem. I understand. I appreciate it. Definitely don't want to mess up. Got to stay focused with work. But yeah, absolutely. You can definitely listen in. I appreciate you stopping by. I do. All right. So I want to see if I get some more folks on here before I know I miss voice. I miss everybody. I really do. So I'm so thankful. Thank goodness that so many of us stayed connected. I used to be on this wonderful creative app called Voicey, where you can basically musicians, producers, writers, singers would link up and they'd create some magical, songwriting and songs. And I'm grateful we've had a lot of people I've kept in contact with. And thank goodness I did, because unfortunately the app was terminated. But a lot of the music that I've put out so far has come from the collaborations that I've done on that app. So I'm so grateful for it. Hey, beautiful Maya, my little sis, how are you? How are you doing? So I got some of you guys coming in. Now tonight, I always present a topic, but I really want to leave space for you guys to ask any questions that you have, possibly about relationships. And if you guys don't, then I will introduce something tonight. I definitely wanted to review the conversation that I started this past Sunday, because this happens to me often. Sometimes I'll introduce something and then I'm like, I could have said that a little bit more concisely, a little bit more clearly. And I had a group coaching session from I have a Forever Friends Academy. It's like a membership, subscription-based membership. And we meet, basically almost every week. And so I had introduced some of the topics that I introduced to you guys on Sunday to them. And we've been talking about fidelity in relationships. So I kind of want to use some of the things that I pulled out of that session to kind of talk about further along what we started with. So I'm going to wait first and see if you guys have any questions, and then I will introduce, the continuation of the topic that I was talking about. And I guess while I'm waiting for you guys to see if you have any questions, I'll put out a question. I know I usually put out a quote, but I'm changing it up a little bit. I'm changing up a little bit for tonight, just because I can. But no, just because of the way I want to continue that conversation. and kind of glean from some of the things that I did on my coaching session. So if you were granted, how can I phrase this? How can I phrase this question? Okay, I'm going to phrase it like this. I guess it's two questions in one. The first part of it is if you had to pick between the two, and someone said, if you could pick between being powerful or important in a relationship, which one would you pick? If you could choose between being powerful, the one that's powerful in the relationship, or the one that's important, which one would you pick? Right? So that's the first question. And hey, Pej, how are you? And the second question is, if you also had to choose between these two things, and let's just say we're constructing the most ideal relationship possible, would you choose to be? Would you be in a relationship? How am I going to phrase this? Would you rather be equal in a relationship or have a relationship that's fair? Would you rather be equal in a relationship or have a relationship that's fair? How you doing, Pej? Thank you so much for popping in. How are you and that beautiful family of yours? So always good to see you popping in. So hopefully you guys, so I got an answer already. It's another Spark said, important. He would rather be important in the relationship. Okay, interesting. And he is a man, so I want to note that. Okay. How are you, Beloved Inc? Can't answer this question. I know the answer. You can still answer it. They don't know. You just put what you're saying, right? So those are the two questions of the night. He said, I just put little man to sleep, so I'm currently in the best mood. I totally understand, right? The people who have kids, you know. You put the babies to sleep, it's like, yes, it's the best thing ever. So I totally understand. All right, so those are questions that I popped out to you guys tonight, and I got one answer so far to the first one, which is if you could choose between being powerful in a relationship or being important, what would you choose? And if you can tell me why, I know typing is a lot. I'm asking a lot, but if you can tell me why, let me know. And secondly, would you want to be in a relationship that's equal or that is fair? So hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. Those are two questions I'm putting out. I'll say it one more time. Would you want to be in a relation? Would you want to be powerful or important in a relationship? And secondly, would you want to be in a relationship that's equal or a relationship that's fair? Yeah. So those are the two questions. And so far I got one answer. One person said he would like to be important. So interesting, folks. And the reason why I'm giving these questions because the last episode that I did, I asked a question to the people, and I felt like I could have asked the question in a better way. And so the question that these questions are kind of coming out of that I presented in my last podcast was, do you think that you can have two things that are, two things or two people that are both necessary and valuable, but they don't have the same value? So do you think you can have two things that are necessary, valuable, but they don't have the same value? And the reason why I brought all of these things up, because in our last episode, we were talking about the difference between having an equal partnership in a relationship, having a traditional type of relationship, which so many people are talking about right now. I feel like that's the argument between equal partnerships versus traditional type of marriages, and what I presented in my last podcast. So, Pej says, I'd say powerful from the standpoint of being impactful to my partner. Oh, interesting. So this is another man's perspective. He says powerful from the standpoint of being impactful to my partner, not so much dominating, and equal for the second question because I value my partner's needs. Okay, thank you. Great, 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 great answers. And it's another one. Spark said fair. Fair for the second question. Fair for the second question. All right, I like your guys' answers so far. So we have two answers so far from two men, which I love that. I always like to hear the perspective. And they are two very different answers. One says important and fair, and the other one says powerful and equal. All right, well, if I have any ladies on here, I would surely like to I sure like to hear from you guys. But we definitely have some feedback from the men. I appreciate it. Okay, Beloved Inc. says powerful. Okay, so we got that's a woman's point of view. Okay, powerful. I like these answers. So while I wait to see if I get any more answers from anyone, I'm pulling this one because and you guys check it out. It's a podcast that I like. I usually listen to them when I have time. I like the guests that they bring on, and their podcast is called Hardly Initiated. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it, but it's two gentlemen who do the podcast, and they basically bring different guests on, and they talk about all different type of relationship topics. And one of the episodes that I came across, I believe it was a relationship coach, but particularly, I guess the audience that he dealt with is more men. And he had made a very what I thought was a very interesting statement that I also presented to my coaching session. And I have another answer coming in. It's another one. Spark says, the only reason I say fair is that men and women play different roles. So I can't always be equal, but it can always be fair. He's just in my backyard now, isn't he? You sound like you graduated from Forever Friends Academy. It's another one. Sparks. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, peace be unto you, Shantae. How are you? Yeah, I agree. And so I'm glad that he said that. I'm going to tell you guys a statement that the gentleman said on the episode that I thought was a very interesting. And one of those statements that if you put out there, that it could be triggersome to some folks. So let me tell you guys what he said. His quote said, and just to give some context, before he said this quote, he was going through the historical things that have been put in place or done to extract the male presence out of specifically our communities, right? So that's kind of like the background as to what led him to say what I'm about to tell you that he said. And so his statement was that women are the most powerful beings and men are the most important. So I'll say it again. He said, women are the most powerful beings and men are the most important. So hence why I kind of asked you guys this question, because I said I want to throw this out to some men and some women. I want to see what they're going to say. And I was curious to see, like tonight, if some of the men would say important and if some of the women would say powerful. And I think because of what it's another one Sparks said about that we can't always be equal, but we can be fair. I think that's what he's alluding to, the coach. I believe his name was Coach Crump, who was on that episode. And I think that's what he was alluding to. And so he agrees. It's another one. Sparks agrees. It says facts. Women create life. That's the ultimate power. I'm with you on that one. I am absolutely with you on that one. Shantae says, sorry, can you state the question again? All right, well, there's multiple questions now, Shantae, right? Isn't that an interesting perspective, Paige? That's why I said I had to process it first. And then I was like, I have to bring this is my private online coaching academy that I brought it to initially, because I had just did my podcast where I was talking about that I didn't really agree with equal partnerships, relationships, for the very reason that it's another one. Spark said that there's no way that it's going to be equal. Because we are literally supposed to be complementary to each other, so that we can be in a space of being continual learners, right? And have enthusiasm to want to understand each other, and that culmination, prayerfully, hopefully, will let us understand God further. And so in my podcast, I said equal partnerships is not really, you kind of, if you have that type of mind state going into the relationship, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, because you're going to fall into a slippery slope of comparison. And in relationships, especially people like Pej, I don't know if anybody else has children on here, but you know that the dynamics of the relationship shifts so many times because of the seasons that you go through. And I have even, I gave them the example that, if I have clients and, we start with their health, and I want them to build, their strength in one of the most important aspects of life. We got to take care of this body that we're living in. And maybe they're not used to it. I'll say just do 15 minutes. Let's just do 15 minutes, a certain amount of days, right? And maybe me, I can do about an hour. I can do about an hour exercise, 45 minutes or so on, because I'm used to it. But that person who's doing 15 can still give their 100, even though they're doing the 15 minutes, right? Even though I've built up a capacity to do an hour straight. So oftentimes when we're in relationships, that's what will happen, right? Certain, depending on what skill sets and what strengths you have, you might be the one that's kind of carrying the baton in a certain season, because it's just of the way that your purpose and how you're made. But that person who might be giving 20% in the total collective of the 100% can still put 100% into that, right? 20% of the collective that they're doing. And sometimes that's not understood when the seasons are changing in the relationship. And then you'll have, right, certain things that get in your mind, and then the thing is like, okay, you're not holding your weight, or you're not pulling your weight, and you're not doing what I'm doing, and I expect for you to do what I'm doing. But that's not really how relationships work, And I gave them an example of the whole beautiful process of when a child comes into the world. The man plants the seed, but that woman's whole body has to transform, change. Her heart literally has to literally her heart shift to make room for that baby. And she sacrifices her life to bring that baby in the world. But if she looks at the natural biological process of how God created and purposed her to, right, go through this process, and say the man is not holding his weight because he doesn't have to go through that process, then, right, that's not being aligned with the truth. He did his part, right? He did his part, and just in the process that they're going through, that's the process that was, right, assigned to her, because that is her purpose. So I think the statement is very, very interesting. Like you guys said, hey, Kat, thank you for coming in. Pej says, absolutely, the dynamic shifts between each other and the kids too. Absolutely, especially when them kids come, right? And he said, that's a hard lesson to learn, though, but beneficial nonetheless. Sometimes all your partner can give is 40%. Absolutely. Literally because of life and Mother Nature. Absolutely. And you have to love it like it's 100. Absolutely. And I think that's why I love his statement, because when I was thinking exactly how it's another one. Spark said that when he was stating that women are the most powerful being, it is indeed because they do bring life into the world, right? They have the most honorable process of harnessing life and developing that life and bringing it into the world. And I love the fact that he also said that men are the most important, because when you kind of look at it, and some of the things that I was explaining to a lot of my clients that I have on my membership, who, when I first threw it out, a lot of them were like, I don't know if I really truly believe that, because they were thinking in that same way, right? That, okay, what? Well, I think we should just have equal playing field here. It should be equally, they're both equally important, or they're both equally powerful. And I said, that's not really how it works, though, And I always love using the example of looking within your body. And I always say that the way our body functions is the same way a relationship should function, which is that they are unequal parts working together to sustain one life. So the people in the relationship are unequal parts working together to fulfill one purpose or to sustain one vision. It's the same thing. And we know, and I'm sure many of you guys know, because we all have different people in our life, and each of those people, I'm sure, are valuable, hopefully, or the people in your life that you consider to be valuable in some way, they might not all be valuable on the same playing field, right? And we tend to have a certain magnetism or get connected to the people who bring the most value to us, right? That's why I appreciate that you guys are taking out time to spend with me, because you could do anything. You could be anywhere tonight. But the fact that you said, let me jump in here with Sharla and see what she's talking about, and prayerfully something that you hear brings some kind of value to you, we're going to glean to the areas that bring the most value. We're just kind of naturally like that. So to say that everything is going to be on equal playing field is just not really true. And I always say on my podcast that God doesn't really make anything good enough. He makes everything just right, meticulous, and to the T. And I was telling my Forever Friends Academy members that, they always say the devil's in the details, but I don't believe that. I believe that God is all through, in and out with the details, because everything that he created was meticulous, and it was put in a certain position and created in a certain way to serve in a certain way. So none of those, the beauty of all of the details can't really be disregarded in that way. So in that same way, I know that sometimes when I say a statement, or somebody says a statement like the quote that I brought up to you guys, where he says that, women are the most powerful beings, but men are the most important. People will be like, well, why do we have to compare? Why do we have to compare? Why can't we just, let it be what it's going to be? And, I think that it's okay to compare in a relationship when you are trying to compare to understand your position in the relationship, right? It's okay to compare in a relationship when you're trying to understand your position in the relationship. It's necessary, because then that's how you know how you are to best function in that relationship. And so hopefully when we have conversations like this and we dissect what the true meaning of love is, or how men and women work together, or how marriage, what is the true meaning of marriage, all those things that we dive into is going to help us understand more of our positioning. And going back to that quote, I agree with what he said, because I remember I had a podcast where a gentleman came on, and he had been raised by his mothers and primarily women. And so he came up to me, and it wasn't even what I was talking about, but I guess because he's heard, he had come into my podcast, and he knows that the principles that I bring up are really steeped in godly principles. So he said, well, why can't God be a woman? And I was like, all right, I'll think about it, and then I'll, try to answer that question for you. And I remember just in my own inward prayer, just asking God, like, how am I supposed to answer this question? And what came to me and what I got was that, of course, God is not man or a woman. He's a spirit and an infinite one at that. However, the way that he has chose to establish his relationship with us is our Father, right? As a father, because he wants us to embrace him as a provider, a protector, and also you need to have a seed, right? You need to have a seed to, right? If you have a garden, you need to have the first plant of a seed for everything else to blossom through it. And so I think in that same way, the reason why that statement of him saying, but the men are the most important, is because when he's saying important, he means the principal thing, right? The thing that needs to be laid first. And anybody in here, I know Pej is a husband, and they're like the foundation. They're like they laid the foundation down, so that the family, right, can thrive and grow and build, and they create stability and structure in that way, so that things can flourish. And once they do that, then the woman comes in and she can take and harness whatever it is that you're giving to her, and of course expand that vision and multiply. And right, you guys become, you multiply to become 3 and 4 and however many God chooses to bless you with. So I can understand, because if you take that piece out, a lot of things crumble. And I think right now, especially in the culture of today, I think a statement like that is so necessary, because I do believe, one, that marriage is kind of just relationship between men and women, the dynamics, it's being threatened and attacked right now. And I think along with that, what else is being attacked is the male presence, the importance of the male presence, not only just in the family, but also in society. So I think quotes like that are just really, really important. And I want to just take some time, because I think I'm missing some things that people are saying. Shantae said, that's incredible, brother. Many blessings to you and your beautiful family. 4 kids in over here. I had time to learn a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. So I want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. So I appreciate you guys' statements. So pretty much most of you guys, well, first of all, yeah, I think most of you guys agree with the quote, right? I know that Pez said it was interesting. I think it's another one, Spark agreed with it. And I know Be Love Inc., if that's Shantavia, she was on my coaching, so I know that she agrees with it. And Shantae, there was a couple of questions that I asked, but just so that you can, I'll throw them out to you really quickly if you want to answer them. I just said at the top of the podcast, if you could be in a relationship where you could be powerful or important, which one would you choose? And if you could be in a relationship, sorry guys, a relationship where you had to choose if you wanted to be in a relationship that was equal or fair, what would you choose? So that's what we were talking about before you came in on that last quote that I said. So feel free to think about it and share what your thoughts are. So, but I like it. I like what what you guys have said. And I think too, Pej, when you said equal, because I care about my partner's needs. I mean, I love the context that you gave. And I also think when things are fair, that's also caring about someone's needs. I remember I said something really controversial. I think I say a lot of things that are controversial. Well, I guess it depends on who the person is and where they are when I say it. But I remember I had an interview and I was on someone else's podcast. I believe, I want to say she's either a relationship coach, or she might even be a therapist. But I had told her this controversial statement, at least I think it is. You guys can let me know. I had told her that, what we're desiring throughout history and even now is really fairness. It's not necessarily equality. And I know y'all like Charlotte, equality and fairness, this is the same thing, but it's really not, as we just kind of broke it down there, right? Equal at its really base level means two of the same things, right? And I love one of my friends because I had talked about this in the past, and she was like, first, Charlotte, I understand what you were saying. She was very honest in that way. But then she said after she processed it, she was like, I totally got it when I put it in a mathematical context. Like I can't put, musician equals teacher, right? We'd have to in math, we'd have to have the equal sign with the diagonal slash in between it, because no, those two things are not the same, right? They're not the same. And when we're talking about equal, that's the base level. That's what we're talking about, right? And just to put it in another context, I said from a spiritual aspect, again, God doesn't really make duplicates. Everything that God makes has its own space, right? So like Pej is an amazing rapper, so it's another one. Sparks, they're in the same industry, right? But they're different and they have their own unique way of expressing whatever truth that comes to them. So if Pej just decides not to, put his skill out into the world, and if it's another one, Sparks, decides not to do it, then we just miss out on the way that in the way that the truth would process, or that creativity would process through them. We would miss out on that, because even though they're doing similar things, they are not the same, because God doesn't really do that. Even in all the ways that we are similar, he makes things to hold its own space and serve its purpose. It's really the other way around. And when you think about it, just taking it kind of like back to a biblical context, it's really when Lucifer, or the devil, wants to be like God, be exactly like God, for all the wrong reasons. By the way, that where you're trying to be equal to someone kind of comes into play. God makes things uniquely just right and purposeful to do what it does, and everything holds its own space. And fairness is it is the golden principle. Now, when we talk about fairness, it's a little different from equal. Fairness is more centered in things that are just. It means that there will not be things put in your way to prohibit you from pouring out, right? All the things that God has put inside of you, that you can't be discriminated against or put at a unfair advantage or at a disadvantage due to how you are different from someone else, right? So that's the difference. It's another one. Spark says when Adam and Eve sinned, God looked for Adam because it was most important that he knows what they did was wrong. He did not look for Eve. Very true. So important that that understand their role as the head of the household. Yeah, absolutely. And what I thought was a really good point, it's another one, Sparks, and I thought what was interesting in the conversation that I had in my coaching session, in the initial resistance of some, when they were thinking about it, it's so interesting because, some of the women who were on that, didn't really feel like, maybe they felt like it should have been an equal thing. So I don't agree with that statement, or that you want to feel like both of them are important. And by the way, in the quote, he says men are most important. So it doesn't mean that the woman is not important at all, right? It's just saying he's most important. And I think when they initially were thinking about that, it was like they were feeling slighted, and not looking at the truth that the person who is the principal thing, or the thing that the person who has to lay the foundation, has to do a lot of the sacrificing, has to take on a lot of responsibility. I remember I had talked to one husband, and I said, as a husband, the way that I term it, and usually in my coaching sessions, is I say he's the demonstrator. He demonstrates first, right? So in the way that I don't know if you guys have heard this, but the top tier of leadership is through demonstration, right? We can communicate, try to guide people, and that's a part of leadership and things like that. But demonstration is the top tier, right? As far as showing great leadership. So he has to demonstrate first. So that means he has to demonstrate through seasons of storms and challenges to stay steadfast in his faith. He has to demonstrate how to reflect and express God's light and his love to you. He has to demonstrate all those things principally, right, to his wife, his children, and things like that. And I told him, it's an honorable position, but it is also a very weighty one, because he's the captain of the ship. Goes down with the ship. It doesn't, right? He doesn't leave the ship. He goes down with the ship all the way, right? No matter what is going on. And so when I heard that, that's kind of what I heard, is like, okay, his is the most important because of the things that he's going to have to demonstrate principally in the relationship, and how when that foundation is laid in that way, how much easier it is for the family to thrive because of that. I didn't look at it like as a status thing. And I think some of the people who were looking at it initially was kind of in that way. And I kind of used the example. So I'm writing a book, and a third book that I'm working on. And in the book, I always say that God is the greatest servant of them all. And, if we could have a peek and go back in way back, I can't even say time, because this didn't happen when time existed, but let's say we could get, a sneak peek of what really happened between Lucifer and God, when he is looking at everybody praising God and giving him all the glory, because he's literally creating everything and serving and giving everything what it needs when it needs it. And he's looking like that is top glory there, but he's not looking like God is the greatest servant, right? He's not looking that he is being glorified because he's serving the most, and in the Bible, for anybody who has read it or does read it, it says, let the greatest among you be a servant, right? Let the greatest among you be a servant. So when I think of somebody who who is most important, right, is going to be the person that is serving, right, the most in the relationship. And that's kind of what it is. It's more of a humbling positioning than anything else. But I can understand when someone hears that, maybe why they would think it would be divisive, especially if they are looking at it from the standpoint of someone who is usurping authority or usurping power, or don't really have the true understanding, right, of what true leadership looks like, and how steeped it is in servitude. So Shantae says, power and fair. Power so I can be the best version of myself while in the relationship. Fair because everything is not created equal. We all have our roles, and not every role is equal. And it's another one, Sparks said, women and children come first, right? Right? And then you got to go down. You got to go down with the ship, right? Yeah, absolutely. So I think, and I always love statements like that, because I always say that God is so amazing. He knows exactly what principles and truths to kind of put in our relationships to check the ego and to check our selfishness in it. Because if you really look at it, if in that statement, women are the most, the woman is the most powerful being, but the man is the most important. The idea is that you're supposed to be a collective unit, right? Even though it's unequal parts working together, you're still a collective unit, working towards one, right, fulfilling one purpose and one vision. So if you have something that is, or someone that's all powerful, or the powerful being, and then you have one who's important, but y'all are on the same team, why would it be a problem? Why would it be a problem? Unless we are now comparing in the way that I was talking about before, where now I'm comparing because I need you to be doing the same thing I'm doing. I need to feel for me to feel like this is a reciprocal relationship and that you're giving your 100, it has to come through the lens of how I'm serving in the relationship versus from me understanding how you're supposed to serve, how God created you to serve in the relationship. Not necessarily, for me saying, okay, kind of tit for tat, I do this, you do that. Because their relationships don't really work like that. And it's another one. Spark says a lot of people are not on the same team. You got that right. That's the problem. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Yeah, that's the truth. And I think statements like that, that's what it causes. It causes, I said to my participants when I was doing my coaching session, it's like a statement that is like an invisible laser that goes through you and it assesses it lets you know where you're at and from what place you're thinking when you answer that question. Because if we're supposed to be one, and that's really the goal where we're going to, is for it to reflect how our body functions, that we have all these unequal parts, right? We have all these different organs, we have all these different systems that are sustaining, our livelihood and well-being. And you kind of know that even though these things are important, right? The brain has its own important function, the heart, all of it has its own value. However, it's not valuable if it's not sustaining the life, right? And so I think when it comes to our relationships, that's what we proceed with. It's like, okay, we know that collectively, whatever the vision that we're birthing is greater than what we can do individually. And so every action that we do, if we're thinking about that oneness, then it doesn't matter if it's highlighted that you're the most important or that I'm the most, the powerful being, because that's what's going to be, right, the elixir that binds us together. We're a part of the same kingdom. We're a part of the same mission. So it actually should be kind of like a good thing. It should be a good thing that, okay, we got this and this. But of course, that's going to take some dropping of the ego to be able to embrace it like that and not see it as being slighted in a certain way. And Shantae says, thank you, King Jesus, for a better understanding. Yeah, amen to that. And I thought about, in one of the examples that I thought about, because, of course, when I hear a statement, I want to process it. And I don't want to just jump the gun and say, yeah, I believe it or I agree with that. Unless it's just like outright, where it's like, okay. And even in that, even when that does happen, where I hear something and it rings really true, I still let it process through me. But I thought about, there was two examples. Well, one example that I gave my coaching session when we were on, and then another example came when we got off of our session. The first example was thinking about chess. I don't really play. I do want to learn. I do want to learn. I'm not really good at it. But I do know this. I know that the queen is pretty much, right, the piece. She can move all different types of ways. And you can kind of use her to protect the king, right? But the idea and the goal of the game is to get the king in checkmate and remove him. And once that king is removed, then the game is over, right? But once that king stays in his position, then, right, that queen can just go. She can move all in all the ways that she can. And then I thought about what Shantae was just saying, just leaning to what she was saying about Christ. And I was thinking about in the Bible where it says, where Christ says, greater things shall you do, right? And I and when I think about that, I think about, how he says the Holy Spirit shall come afterwards. And I think it's also the fact that Christ, he lays down the foundation, right? He is the bridge for the salvation. And he's saying out of his mouth, greater things will you do. But does that take away from the fact that if he did not do that act, right, the bridge to salvation would not be there? No, he's saying greater things shall you do because, right, I came to fulfill this, right, be the fulfillment, the word of God. And I'm going to do this in a certain span of time, and then I'm going to go, right? But you're going to continue the work. Now God's Spirit can dwell in you, and you can expand the message and the truth of God. And the more that you can kind of, work with each other, the better. But at the same time, it's still not taken away from the fact that he laid that foundation down. And I think it's so telling of what's going on in modern day culture now, because even someone who was on the session that I was introducing, the quote that I introduced, well, the third quote, because I introduced a lot of questions to you guys tonight, but the quote that I introduced to you guys, she was saying, well, what about the dynamics, like when the woman is the breadwinner and the husband is not, and he supports her. And I'm like, well, that's what we were talking about earlier, where the dynamics in the relationship shift. But just because those dynamics shift, the order and the structure doesn't. The order and the structure doesn't shift. And it's like a woman valuing how much money she makes over the fact that she can literally, harness life within her. One can't equate to the other, and I know that not all women can bear children, but I'm talking to the ones who have been able to do that, and it still stands the truth that there's no way that you can equate to how much money you're going to make to the fact that the amount of, I guess, sharpening of your character, the amount of transformation that you go through, the amount of sacrifice that you give when you go through that process. There's nothing that can really equate to that, really, And for the woman who might not biologically can have it, but decides to, if she chooses to adopt and become a mother in that way, that also still takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of transformation, right? So it's still the same thing, but I think, in that person presenting that example, that's what she was thinking. Like, okay, well, now the woman makes more money, so then that shifts the truth of it. It's like, no, that man supporting her in that way is still creating a certain consistent stability and strength for her. So I think it's much needed. It's much needed, especially in what's going on now in the current day. So I think it's great. I love you guys' feedback. I wasn't sure of how it was going to go or what you guys' thoughts were going to be on it. But a lot of you guys on here seem to agree with it and understand. And I think it is important. It's important to honor the importance of the male presence in the family. And it's undeniable because, listen, across nations, and I said it even in the coaching session I was on, if it comes to war, they're going to go after the men first. They would be very foolish not to, because they're going to try to cut off cut off the head so that they can, right, just go through that nation. So it's undeniable the many different systems that are put in place for that to happen. And why would that happen that way if they weren't, you know? So, hello, how are you? Welcome to the chat. Thank you so much. This is my Forever Friends podcast, where we talk about all different relationship topics, and I introduce a quote tonight. So welcome. Hopefully you've been enjoying so far what you've been hearing. So thank you guys. Let me know if you have any other statements or feedback. And of course, let me know if you have your own questions. It doesn't have to be particularly on this topic that I brought up tonight, but I always want to leave you guys space just in case if you have any questions or relationship topics that you would like to talk about. Hey, Izzy, how are you, beautiful? I've been on here for a little while, so yeah, we're probably winding it down now, but thank you for popping in, lovely. We talked about a lot. We talked about a lot, but for, and I can't read your name on YouTube, but just because you and Izzy just came in, I will let you guys know some of the questions that we did talk about and answer tonight. I said if you had to choose between these two things, would you rather be powerful in a relationship or would you rather be important? That was the first question. And the second one was, would you want to be in a relationship and be equal or have an environment that's fair? So that was some of the questions that we talked about. And I also presented a quote to them to see what their thoughts were on it. And the quote said that women are the most powerful beings, but men are the most important. So that's what we're talking about. So feel free if you want to answer any of those questions or let me know what your thoughts are on it. But I appreciate you guys joining me for the conversation. And for all of you guys, great feedback. Pej, it's another one. Spark, Be Love Inc., Shantae, all great responses tonight for the questions and the quotes. Let me make sure I didn't miss any. No, I didn't. I think interesting topic, right? Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely thought so. You know, and I was saying to some of my participants that, you know, you can kind of see sometimes in relationships where sometimes when lack of honor starts to diminish in the relationship, that you can kind of see where the man starts to feel like he's not, you know, his positioning, what he's doing is not important. So I can see definitely why the necessity of that statement, because you can, right? We're living off of many foundations that have been built for us, right? Just whether it's just the luxury of being able to travel, the luxury of some of the electricity and the heat and all kind of things that you have, and we forget about it. We just think like, okay, we're doing this day by day, and forgetting that these things had to be laid down for us to be able to experience it. So that's kind of like, I guess, a natural thing that happens. And you can kind of see that in the dynamics of relationships, you know, where the foundations that have been built, you kind of forget about it. And maybe the daily, like women most of the times on a daily, you can kind of see the ins and out of what they do and how they serve throughout the day, especially if they have children and tend to their families. And oftentimes maybe what the male presence that's there, the things that that husband does, sometimes it's unseen. So if it's unseen, sometimes it's also not honored because it's not that obvious to see. What's the next time I'm on? I come on Thursdays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 2 days a week. So the next time I'll be on is this Sunday. And on Sunday, I like it because we do our, what you have experienced before, is the Sunday scenarios where I do the relationship scenarios and you guys get to tell me what your thoughts are on. So those are always fun. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Shantae, for writing it down so he could see. Yeah, so the next time I'll be on is Sunday. So I got to think up a good one for you guys, a good scenario for you guys. So I don't think I see any. Just give it probably a minute or so because I know it takes a while to type and I don't want to just get off if someone is typing a question. So I'll give it a minute or two to see if you guys have any questions. If not, then yeah, we are wrapping it up for tonight and I'll be on Sunday. Oh, good. Absolutely. I can't wait. I have fun talking to you guys. I learn a lot. I get a lot from it. So we'll see. I got to think of a good one, a good scenario for you guys to talk about. So I look forward to seeing you. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Give it one more minute just in case someone's typing. And then we're going to get off, folks. But great conversation tonight. Absolutely. Thank you, Shantae, for popping in. Yeah, they had great input. And I was glad we had some men on tonight. That was perfect. I really wanted to see how they were going to answer. I really wanted to see how he was going to answer. And it's another one spot. He was right. In my backyard, all in the closets. I say that when somebody like just aligns with exactly what I was going to say tonight. And he did. He had all the answers that I was thinking about. So absolutely loved it. Ba-ba-ba. He said not to be nosy. I love it. But how is your marriage relationship? Is it fair or is it equal? You know it's fair. It's fair. Everything that, for the most part, that I bring up here are principles that, thankfully, by the grace of God, we started out in our friendship very young. So a lot of the things that I introduce here, only by the grace of God, let me say that again, we were kind of functioning in it before I could articulate what we were doing. And I only really, I feel, was able to develop the skill to articulate it when I needed, like when God said, okay, I need you to share this with other people. Then it was like, oh my goodness, kind of going back in time and saying, oh my God, so that's what was going on. Oh, that's what we were doing, et cetera, et cetera. So no, it's definitely not equal. It is definitely fair though. It's definitely fair. And I will say that in the fact that I honor my position and my role and, who I am as a wife and a mother, and I honor his position as a husband and a father. And it's been really fulfilling doing that. I think it's kind of like an illusion, I always say the devil's very crafty, and sometimes you think he'll package something that's not really aiming to have a real positive, impactful effect, but make it seem like it is. So I understand when people are saying I want an equal partnership or what they're thinking that is. But it's when you look out in the world, it's just not really like that. And I remember on my coaching session, one of the people said, well, I can understand the statement that he said about women being the most, being powerful, but men being the man being the most important in a marriage context, but not in the greater world. And in my thinking is that the people and the structure of the family is what, right, we pour out into the world. So talking about relationships and love is important, because if we don't, then, and we have these broken families, then those are the people that are going to be going out into society and structuring the way that we live our life, right? Every nation is built upon the fundamental building block of the family. So I don't think that the principles that are reflective in a marriage are void when we go out and look into the world. And I had given them example. I said, if for some bizarre reason, right, or change, immediate change, the men of this country said, okay, women, you can't, no more education for you. You can't work, right? Which is, it's like that in some other countries right now. If they were to say that to us, right, we as women, we could protest, right? We could try to protest, but the truth is that we would need men who would feel that maybe that was some kind of oppressive type of dictatorship type of, right, rule that is being placed upon us. And we would need some of those men to fight for us, because us doing it by ourselves, it's just not going to, it's not, and I mean, we could try to feel like it would, but that's just the truth, pound for pound. And so I think the things that thankfully we're in, at least for me, thankfully I'm in America, that provides women fairness, an opportunity to be able to thrive in, at least have an opportunity to see how she's skilled or how God has purposed her to put out into the world outside of, now, well, I don't even want to say outside of, from her family out. And I'm grateful for that, because not every woman has that. But the way that we are establishing our families is what's going to be reflected out into the world. It's not going to be like this disconnected thing of, okay, this is how it works at home, but when I go out into the world, it's not necessarily that way, because it's just not the truth. Many of the ways that we are able to thrive now as women are based on the foundations that a lot of men have built, and that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong in saying that. It's just the truth. And many of us women wouldn't want to do a lot of the things that they did to create certain structures, foundational structures for us. So yeah, it's most definitely fair in that we honor each other's position. And I'm not trying to compare myself to him or what he does. Kind of stay in the lanes that God has given us, and endorse each other in the ways that God purposes us to. So, yeah. So you weren't being nosy. That was a good question. That was an honest question. Yeah, no, it's fair. I try to introduce things that I have found to be, what's the word I'm looking for? That work, that have been applicable in my relationship, as well as what I pass on to the clients that I see that it works. So, and it's actually been the most enriching, because once you realize that you're your own unique type of soul, then you don't really, waste your time, or at least if it comes, you can put the truth there, that you don't really have to compare yourself to another person's role. You just, be the just right person that God created you to be, and serve as much to your fullest capacity there. So, and it's enriching. It's enriching. I'm not trying to prohibit my husband from demonstrating the position that God has placed him in. I actually find delight in that when he's doing that, because I it's not for me, but I reap the rewards of it, and vice versa. He reaps the rewards of me doing that as well. So, great question. All right. So I think That's it. I think that's the only question. So I don't see any more. So I appreciate you guys for coming on with me. And I'll be back Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, if you liked anything that you heard, you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. And for those of you, the full episodes are always going to be on my YouTube channel. If you're on IG or Facebook and Twitch, any other forum, you can subscribe to it's called Forever Friends Academy. You can subscribe to that channel and you'll get notified whenever I'm coming live, and you get notified and see the full episode. So, and if you want to dive in deeper, I also have one-on-one coaching clients as well as couples, etc. You can just click on the description if you're on YouTube, or click the link in my bio to peruse my Forever Friends Academy website. It has snippets from my coaching sessions, and you can dive in and become a member. All right, but absolutely love you guys. Great conversation tonight. You guys stay blessed as well. And until next time, always remember to live to love freely, and I'll be back on Sunday. All right, have a good night, guys. Bye.